Hello, a very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you might be around the world. This is your favorite podcast, Think Point Podcast, with me, Ali Job. And today I have a very outspoken, renowned economics and expert to take us through our topic of discussion, which is the future of the Gambia and then the job opportunity or youth empowerment in the country. With me is Dr. Jiba, Gajiko rather. My apologies for that. He's an
Okay.
economics, a former employee of African Development Bank. He was a researcher, seasoned researcher, and of course, evidence-based governance passionate, very passionate to talk about governance issues in the Gambia. Without much ado, Doctor, take us through who is Doctor, where you from, what are some of your education background, and a little bit about a professional background as well.
Thank you, Mr. Job. Thank you for having me on your program. I was born in Fatoto in Kantora district, URR. That's where my mom is from, and that's where I started primary school. But my dad was a teacher, so I attended many schools across the country. My dad came from Badibu, so I call at least two regions home: URR and NBR, Kantora and Badibu. um, so I attend, like I said, I attended many primary schools because, as you know, the life of a teacher in the Gambia is being posted around in different parts of the country. But I did my high school at Nusrat, and then I did a
Wow.
year of sixth form, and then I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. So I went to the US for my undergraduate, for my bachelor's degree, master's, and PhD, all in the US and all in the field of economics. My specialization in my PhD program was mainly development economics with emphasis on things like public finance, agricultural economics. Um, Career-wise, my first job was with the Earth Institute at Columbia University, but I didn't stay there very long. After that, I went to the World Bank. Again, after some time, I moved to African Development Bank. I spent most of my career in the African Development Bank. I also work briefly with the UN system, particularly at the FAO. But in terms of consultancies, I've worked with many other institutions, many other UN agencies. I also did some work with the BRICS Bank in Shanghai, where I work on development results measurement. I set up a system for them for development results measurement in Shanghai. Um, Most of I'm a development economist by training. So at the African Development Bank, I was mainly in the research department. I was the division manager for the development impact division. I also worked in the research department at the World Bank, but I also worked in the private sector, the unit at the World Bank that deals with private investments across many areas: agribusiness, manufacturing, supply chain financing, trade finance. So it's quite a bit. But lately, for those who have been following what I've been doing lately, I call myself more of a farmer because over the past 10 years, I've been operating some farms in the US. Sorry, in the Gambia, in the Gambia, where, I grow a lot of crops. I also have aquaculture that I've been engaging in for the past 5 years, and I've expanded across other regions from where I started in the West Coast. So yeah, so that's a bit of a background.
Doc,
Yeah.
it seems like you have been through so many things. Having a Gambian, defining odds in global space, it is very rare. I mean, but we will get into the discussion proper
But
now.
now we have a lot of Gambians doing that now. So let's hope that we can have an environment where more of them can feel confident to come back.
Of course. So, Doc, we will just get into the program today, and I think someday I will bring you over to discuss about some of your projects that you are doing in the Gambia, and of course, and the politics that you are in now. But today, the discussion is going to be centered on the subject matter that has to do with the youth employment in the Gambia. You, as an agriculturist, you as somebody who have studied agricultural economy, you must have a vast knowledge when it comes to, you know, private sector economy and productive sector of economy as well. So just to sum up, Gambia's youth employment, a lot of people are living for greener pasture in global north. From the statistic last time, we have realized that almost 12,000 Gambians, you know, left the soil of the Gambia for Europe in search of greener pasture. And from the some of the things that we have received recently, when KMC rolled out to give funding to returnees, they said they have registered 7,000 Gambians who will return back home. You know, so what is the current state of youth employment in the Gambia? If you had to
No,
assess.
yeah. So, normally in other countries where things are functioning reasonably well, you start out with the youth unemployment rate. But in a country like the Gambia, the youth unemployment rate is actually, it's not a useful number. See, because you have to go back to the issue of how is unemployment calculated. The unemployment rate is basically the number of people who are not employed but are looking for job over the total number of people in that particular bracket in the labor force.
Mhm.
Now, which means that if you are a young person, let's say you've tried looking for a job many months, you couldn't find anything, and you gave up looking for a job, you will no longer be counted as unemployed. So think about that. So these official figures about unemployment rate in an economy like the Gambia where things are not working very well, these those unemployment figures that are useful indicators of economies like in the US and other parts, those no longer apply in the Gambia. So many people forget that, and they start and they might see that, oh, unemployment rate for youth is only like maybe 15, 16%, which is still bad. But if you are in the Gambia, it's more than that. And the reason is that you have to know how these statistics are calculated. So for youths that have tried very hard and they give up looking, they will no longer be counted in unemployment. So the numbers that you see do not reflect reality. The unemployment situation is really bad in the Gambia. So a more useful statistic is what is called the NEET, N-E-E-T, which is not in employment, not in education, not in training. In other words, the number of youths that are neither, because when you're talking about youth, you should either be in school or or in education or in some form of training, because you are at this productive stage. You cannot be retired. You cannot be too young not to go to school. So to be a youth, you have to be either in employment, in
Mhm.
education, or in training. But in the Gambia, this proportion is very, very high. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but the number just came out from the Gambian Bureau of Statistics. It's a very, very high number. What it means is that the economic situation in the country, it's really bad. I mean, and the way you look at that, you look at all of these sectors. What are the main sectors in the Gambia? It's basically agriculture and the service sector. We don't have any manufacturing. The percentage of the economy that is in manufacturing is very small, which is very unfortunate because it's a
Mhm.
very high labor intensive sector.
Mhm.
The service sector also doesn't generate as much employment. There are some jobs available, but they're not quality. So one area that could generate a lot of work would be agriculture. But we can go a bit more into detail. Is that agricultural sector
Mhm.
is pretty much, there isn't much going there, mainly because there is no investment going there and doesn't get the support from the government sector that it needs. So the opportunities that can generate employment in the country are very, very minuscule. And as a result, employment opportunities, particularly for the youth, are they are very limited. The few jobs that are available are substandard. So it's no wonder that you have a large percentage of our youths who are trying to go to the back way and look for greener pastures.
Yeah. So, like you said, I was able to see the data. It's almost about like 45% of the Gambians neither train nor employment. What do you think are some of the indicators? A lot of people, because for me, I do not, most of the time I do not take the reports from IMF very serious, because in most cases these data are given to them by the Gambia government or the institutions at some point. But looking at the things at the local level, domestically, you will understand that These are the things that do not suit in realities. What do you think are some of the things preventing young people? Because I have friends who went to GDTI, I have friends who study, plumbering and so on. But better still, they do not have any job to do. There is no sector that can actually, accommodate these young people to actually have job. If people talk about the issue of creating skills, while there's no avenue to consume these people to work, what do you have to say about that?
No, basically, yeah, employment is created by companies in the private sector having demand for workers. Now, if you are in the private sector and you know that if you have a good or service to provide, that people will buy it, you are going to demand workers because you need workers to generate that good and service. Now, let's go to the example you provided at GTTI, where people will study plumbing or some sort of like electrical installation. They will finish that, and there wouldn't be most jobs. Now, if you study something like that, what is the sort of job you'll be interested in construction? Now, what think about the most important thing the government has done for the construction sector recently. The
Mhm.
most important thing the government has done for the construction sector recently, the most, I mean, not important, the most prominent thing, because it's not important, it's terrible. The most prominent thing the government has done for the construction sector is that to make cement very expensive.
Mhm.
Cement used to be a very highly competitive product where you have some large scale importers that would import in bulk, and you also have small scale importers that would import across the border from Senegal. What did the government do? They pretty much banned the small scale importers from importing cement for the benefit of only three large importers of cement. What did that do to the price of cement? First
It
of all,
escalated.
it escalated all the way to over 500. 500. A few years ago, we used to have cement of around just 200, 200 plus.
Mhm.
Now, over $500. At some point, it reaches that. In other cases, there would actually be a cement shortage. At the beginning of this rainy season, there was a cement shortage.
Mhm.
That means people were building, and their buildings had to be stopped, mainly because cement wasn't available. So you had a situation where an artificial shortage and price increase was created by the government. So what did you think that did to the construction sector? So if we have institutions, it didn't matter how well GTTI was training young people in um, in plumbing, in things like electrical installation. If the whole construction sector has been basically, made to be go through a mini recession, you know, those people, despite how well they've been trained, they are not going to have a job. So they would have spent months or years studying, spent a large amount of money paying because GTTI is not very cheap, and then afterwards would have trouble finding jobs. This example here, it encapsulates the larger problems that we have in the country. The problems we are facing in the Gambia are not some natural phenomenon or some global effects that we have no control over. If you look at every single sector, the common thread you will find running through all of them is government policies, either through government actions where they are making situations worse, or inaction where they could have done something to improve situations and they choose not to do anything. So I think this example you brought here, and particularly in the construction sector, is a very good example of the reasons why we have such limited employment opportunities for the youth.
Yes, Doctor, to drag you a bit, you made mention of the issue of GTTI and whatnot. Have you seen the video or the pictures of the Gambians when the government make a pronouncement that they have a job opportunity for Gambians in Spain? You see people climbing over the fence, some people
Yes.
running. You will see women. When you saw that footage, what comes to your mind? What was your feeling? And later on, only 35 or 40 people were given that opportunity.
Actually, I saw some of those things with my own eyes.
Mhm.
Because at the time, I remember driving past this office on Karaba Avenue, that labor office. And I remember at some point also, I was in Kerewan, and when some people, when they had the news, some of them in NBR, they drove all the way there. It was a
Mhm.
sea of people. It was completely, misguided. The Gambia right now, we have a large number of youth. I pointed this out early to many people. Even if this program was, if I were in the position of the Gambia government, and the Spanish government approached me with a program where they are going to help some Gambians find a job through a legal way in Spain. And but you have to ask yourself, why would the Spanish government want something like that? They wanted to control the number of people who are coming illegally, through the back way. Now, in this particular situation, the goal of the Gambia government and the goal of the Spanish government are aligned. You both want to limit the number of young people leaving. But here, there is a bit of a divergence. As a leader of the country, your goal is to create employment opportunities at home. Many Gambians who are going to, whether it's Spain or England or any other country, even if they are given an air ticket, if they have an equivalent opportunity at home, they wouldn't go. Much more taking a risky route. So the goal of the Gambian government should have been to tell the Gambia, even if Spain offers such a program, the Gambian government should have come up with a counter program and said, listen, we are in the same thinking with you that we would prefer our young people to work at home, make a living, work in a dignified job. Instead of having programs where we send a handful of people and create expectations that cannot be met, why don't we design some employment program in the country across various sectors? It could be in agribusiness, it could be in food processing, it could be in manufacturing, it could be in the service sector, could be in ecologists. There is no shortage of sectors in the country where, with sufficient planning and assistance, you can create employment opportunities at home. And in that process, you create goods and services that the Gambian consumers would want. Or if it is for the foreign market, you generate exports. And the generation of those exports will generate foreign currency, whereby the constant pressure we are having on our dollar through its constant depreciation would be ameliorated to a great degree. A regime that is thinking about long-term solutions, this is the counter offer or solution it will offer to the Spanish government. Create programs at home so that those young people can learn skills, expand their businesses, employ other young Gambians. But you have a program where only 30 or 40 Gambians are taken. And in fact, the things that they promised them, they didn't materialize. Some of them were promised a certain amount when they go that they will be receiving to help them settle down, and that didn't happen. I'm in touch with some of them. So in fact, you shouldn't be surprised that almost all of them refuse to come back, because a program like this, for it to work in the first place, people have to be able to look forward to returning. But if your economy is doing badly, you are not doing anything to improve your economy, and the young people, few of them are given the opportunity to leave, none of them would want to come back. So
Exactly.
a program like this will not continue. And the Spanish government may not even want to design a future program with the government, because they will say this pilot one failed. What are the chances that another one would work? So here, the government they didn't approach this with seriousness. They didn't approach this like a government that understands our problem, that has the aim of solving our problem long term. They didn't approach this opportunity that way, and as a result, it hasn't addressed any employment problem. It's not going to affect the number of people who want to leave the country for greener pastures.
Yes, let's move a bit, Doc. Let's go into education and market alignment as an economics. You have seen the Gambian education system. Do you think our education system align with the market demand or job market?
No, I mean, again, if you have people graduating
Yes,
from
because sorry,
training
because University of the Gambia graduate almost 1,200 people every year, and I mean, I have colleagues. I was at the university. You have seen people studying political science, development studies, agriculture. In fact, agriculture. I think when I bring you for agricultural program, you discuss more about the school of agriculture. After the schooling, they don't have any passion to get into governance. They don't have any passion to get into policy analysis. They don't have any passion. Even if they have passion, they are not that individual, because you graduated from high school, you just want to get to university. Then you say to yourself, like, wait, let me just go and do the development studies. Let me go and do environmental studies. Let me go and do agriculture just to get a role at the university. At the end of the day, there is no job for you. Do you think there's an alignment?
No, it's not. It is not, obviously. And this problem emanates from different areas. The first point that I would like to emphasize here is that the economy of a country is all interconnected. You cannot a country that where you just say kids, children will go from high school, primary school to high school to university, without having an economy that is creating jobs, without removing constraints to industries and sectors working. I'll give you an example. Right now, the energy situation in the country is problematic.
Mhm.
Electricity price is very expensive and it's very unreliable. At
Yeah,
this moment, we are in here. Thank God I'm using a laptop and I have some backup. But it's I've been in a radio program where it was cut in half because power went out.
sure.
In that situation, very few people would come to invest in industries in your economy, and you need those to create jobs. So without a private sector that is thriving, that's creating jobs, it doesn't matter how many people you graduate. In fact, the more people you graduate, the more misalignment you are going to have between training and opportunities later.
Mhm.
So it is very important to underscore the fact that everything is interconnected. A country that has a bad education system, where quality of education is going down,
Mhm.
is also going to be a country where employment opportunities are going to be few and far between, at least
Mhm.
for quality jobs.
Mhm.
So, but when you come to the education sector itself, there are many issues there that the government is doing wrongly.
Mhm.
You know, you have, if you look at the University of the Gambia, there are too many degrees being offered.
Exactly.
Too many degrees are being offered, but at the same time, you don't have enough lecturers. You have people who enter a bachelor's degree program, and sometimes it will take them more than 4 years to finish, even though they are doing their best. They are not missing any classes, but because there is a core course that needs to be taught by a professor who is not available.
Mhm.
That happens all the time. You have
Exactly.
high performing students who would finish, senior secondary school with excellent marks,
Exactly.
and then there would be no scholarship.
Or program, or a
Yes,
particular
or
program.
yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
So basically, these are failures of government. Education is one specific area, but when you see these particular glaring failures in the education sector, know that they are being mirrored by other failures in other parts of the economy as well. Because I can give you examples of agricultural funding that this government has received that have millions of dollars that have been completely wasted. But if those had been invested properly, those agri graduates at the university would have had very good employment. Those business graduates would have had very good employment opportunities. So here, what we see is basically a confluence of a number of, several bad policy implementation, or lack of implementations of policies, or bad executions of programs that are creating the problems that we are all witnessing today in the Gambia.
Before moving forward, this reminded me of Julburu in the Gambia. A couple of years ago, the Gambia government have levied high tax on this institution, or this manufacturing institution, which employed almost over 300 to over 200 or 300 Gambians. And when they moved to Senegal, or when the business got closed in the Gambia, a lot of Gambians lost their job. When you heard about government fracas with Julburu or Banjul breweries, what was your thought? Do you think government could have done something great in keeping this company who is paying millions of dollars in tax, while government is not actually providing anything for them?
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember that. I remember about that, and I just remember feeling incredibly sad about that. I mean, this is a company that had been in existence in the Gambia for years. I mean, for how long? I don't even
Hmm.
remember. I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up seeing that factory there. I
Hmm.
cannot even tell you when it was created. Again, but remember, this is manufacturing. This is
Hmm.
a sector.
Hmm.
This is a sector which is critical for an economy. Without this sector, I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can see you. Hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. Without this sector, you're not going to create. You're not going to generate quality employment. In fact, manufacturing is important in so many ways. you one of the things I tell people is that Gambia in this current situation cannot be where we are unless we go. First of all, we need to increase productivity in agriculture, have agricultural transformation, but that needs to be matched by economic transformation. We need to start from the low rung of manufacturing, processing, agro processing, then go into higher level of manufacturing. Gambia currently, the percentage of our economy that is from the manufacturing sector is in single digits.
Mhm.
And it is manufacturing that is a big determinant, one of the biggest determinant of your international trade.
Mhm.
Because right now you cannot export your groundnut to Senegal. You
Mhm.
cannot export your sand mining into Senegal. But if
Mhm.
you do agro processing, if you do juice and other things, you can export them to any African country.
Mhm.
So if you talk about regional integration, you're not going to have it without manufacturing. So a country that is struggling economically, that is not generating employment, you have one of your few companies that
Mhm.
is in this very critical sector, and you basically you basically purposefully kick that company out. It means you really have no idea, what needs to be done to improve your economy. So it was a very, very sad indictment of the caliber of economic officials we have in the country. To have, first of all, countries would kill, they would do anything to attract these sort of companies
Investors.
right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, these sort of investors, especially not just in any sector, especially in manufacturing.
Mhm.
But we actually had this one that was operating here despite all of the problems. This company stayed here throughout 22 years of a dictatorship.
Mhm.
But it's only in this new administration that they actually implemented things to shoot us in the foot, just like they did in the cement sector. They didn't have to do much, just let things go as they were going, but they intervened and made the situation worse. And this is if I may emphasize, this is a very common thing with this administration. I can tell you of agricultural projects that were financed by ADB to help with rice cultivation and processing,
Mhm.
to go and help certain communities in URR and CRR. Those people were doing fine. This government went and gave those contracts to politically connected people who had no expertise or experience in land development in agriculture. They
Mhm.
went and destroyed, literally destroyed the rice fields of those communities. You have communities in URR today that because of the incompetence of this government to give contracts to unqualified people, they are now cultivating far smaller areas than they used to cultivate before. It's a
Mhm.
very, very sad thing.
So, Doc, this will actually take me to the issue of privatization of government institutions, or corporate institutions. One of those things are, one we can say it has to do with Gamtel Gamsal. Recently we have heard that Gambia government is trying to sell Gamtel Gamsal to private individuals, and this will make a lot of people to lose their job who have been working in this institution for a long time. When you talk about retirement, Gambia, nobody got like 500,000. So when you hear about this issue, privatizing um, one of our technological institution, what comes to your mind?
Well, first thing I want to say is privatization in and of itself is not a bad thing. There are some things that the private sector does better than a government-run institution.
Mhm.
So it's not to say I want to be very clear that I don't want to make a very broad statement saying privatization is good or bad. It all depends on the context. There are some public sector, there are some activities that are best done by the government, things like the National Utility Service, you know. But Gamtel Gamcell is an interesting thing. I remember growing up when Gamtel was one of the best telecommunications companies in Africa, without a doubt, one of the best run. The times when people like Bakari Njai was running this, it was operated very efficiently. The 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 the, the, the decline in quality that we observe is something that started happening during the Jammeh era, but it accelerated significantly in this Barrow regime. So a government itself that took a well-functioning institution and made it perform worse is the last government you want to be in charge of privatizing it. Because when they are going to privatize that institution, they are not going to make sure that there is value for money for the country. They are not going to look at the interest of the country's interest. They are just going to look at the interest of a few investors and possibly those of officials. So coming to this specific point, I actually had a chance to look at some forensic accounting reports of uh, of Gamcell. Gamcell was so badly run; it needed to be privatized a long time ago, not today. Gamtel could have been saved. Gamtel just needed a bit of reform. Now, what this government is currently doing, I'm not privy to all of the details, what they plan, whether they are going to privatize all of them. But I know what we are witnessing with the case of Gamtel is very sad, because if this government handles the state-owned enterprise, it could continue to generate income, because it was actually it's a company that had assets that were far higher than its liabilities, unlike that of Gamcell, which was bleeding money. Yeah. So here the devil is in the detail. The point I would like to make is that I am not against privatization, because some institutions probably deserve to be privatized. But with this particular government, when certain institutions are being privatized, especially when this government has a role playing in their downfall, in their deterioration in management and board oversight, we need to be highly, worried. I wouldn't trust this government to privatize any institution given their
So
track record.
government has mortgage, or what we call asset recycling. I mean, Doc, you're an economics, somebody who has worked with a very, great institution worldwide. When government privatize, when government recycle the Senegambia Bridge, you talk about the airport being given to foreign companies to run the airport for more than 20 years. Um, you talk about the ferry service, the port. Now government is trying to recycle every institution that we do have, or every area where Gambia government can actually get money to pump our economy, has now been given to foreign investors. As an economics, how do you assess this?
No, I'm glad you brought up some of these examples, because the bridge one is a very good example of how terribly this government is shortchanging the Gambian people. I worked on that bridge, by the way, when I was at the ADB as a principal economist. So from the very moment I was an economist in the team looking at the development, the development impact, and there was a lot of studies to see what this bridge could do for the Gambia. I know many details about this bridge, because from the very moment when the project started in 2012 until when the construction started, I was at the ADB. This bridge was built at the cost of about 100. It's less than $100, but we just round it up. It's around 96 million. Now, asset recycling, like I said, in many things, there are, when we hear about a term, it could be in practice, strip of a particular context, it could be good. Asset recycling can be good if implemented well. The devil is always in the detail, whether the implementation has been done correctly. What is asset recycling? It just means you take an asset that is expected to generate some value for you over time. You find a willing partner that can give you a lump sum money now. They take over the operation and maintenance of that asset. In the meantime, you have some money now as a government. You can use that money and invest it in another asset. That's why the recycling is there. So you're taking the valuation, monetizing a particular asset to go and start a different one. So what this government actually did for this Trans-Gambia or Senegambia bridge was not asset recycling. What did they do? They took the money and just spent it, put it in the general budget. So we cannot point to any particular asset or infrastructure and say that infrastructure has been built from the money that was received from the Trans-Gambia bridge. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem here we have is that the fleecing of the Gambian people, the amount of money we got is far lower than the value. And the reason we got that is because we have a minister of finance who is very incompetent, who knows nothing about asset recycling, who doesn't know how to value an asset. Because what he did not know was that he believed that the value of the bridge is the amount that was used to construct it. But that doesn't make sense. An asset like a building or a bridge, its value is not your cost of construction. Its value is determined by the present value of the discounted flow of future cash stream of income. If I build a building today, $5 million in the Gambia today, do you think today, the day after, I should sell it for 5 million?
No,
No.
it appreciate.
In fact, if I'm going to sell that building, I might sell it for 10 million. Yes. So the thing is that when Africa 50 actually was looking into this, they had a financial model. They had a financial model where they looked at the value of the bridge. You know how much they value the bridge, Africa 50? They value the bridge at 500 million US dollars. 500 million. The Gambia government went and got only 100. And to make it worse, we are going to get less than 100 million. Because all of the work that Africa 50 is doing in the toll bridges right now, if you go to Yilitenda and Babatenda, all of that amount will be deducted from that 100 million. For the next 25 years, they will pay zero tax, no tax whatsoever. On top of that, for the next 25 years, for 100 kilometers of River Gambia, we cannot build any bridge there. Think about that.
Sure.
The amount of money we lost in this Africa 50 bridge is more than all of the roads that Adamo Barrow's government has constructed. We lost at least 400 million US dollars because Adamo Barrow has chosen people like Sidin Jai, who knows almost nothing about economics. His knowledge of asset recycling in particular is very, very bad. And this is not the first time you can see the incompetence of
Syndicator.
CDK. Yeah, not Sidin Jai, CDK.
Mhm.
So here, so this is the point here. Just like with the privatization of Gamcel and Gamtel, asset recycling in principle is not bad if done well. You could have done an asset recycling and make sure that the Gambia government gets at least 300 million to 400 million from this bridge. With that 300 to 400 million, you could build enough power plants to make sure that Gambia would have zero power outage, the electricity would be cheap, and Gambia would even export electricity to Senegal and other countries. But here we are getting a fraction of the value of the bridge that is less than 5 years old. We are prevented, for a country that is bisected by a river where a bridge becomes important, we are prevented from building a bridge for 100 kilometers on River Gambia. During that time, we will get zero tax, even though this company will be making it. In fact, the company is making so much money, they are using this contract now. Africa 50 is making so much money from this bridge. Now they are using this contract now to attract investors because they are telling investors, based on the amount of return we are going to make in the Gambia, you guys can come and invest in our other project. They are now approaching investors on the basis of the excellent deal they are getting at the expense of Gambians. So the point here is that every privatization you see in the Gambia here, you should be worried. Not because privatization is bad, but because of the kind of people we have in the government who either they don't care about the country or they don't know what they are doing, or both.
Though we will definitely have you again, I mean, to discuss more about economics issues. But I just want you to touch a little bit on the issue of $15 million given to a particular company to engage in rice production. I remember when I was doing political economy of Africa in 1980s, there was something called SARS project, structural adjustment program in Africa, and in African countries, they enjoy a lot. Use somebody from Fado to around, I mean, Bansang, that end. We know Jahali Pachan was rice hope for the Gambia. I mean, our parents were not buying rice at that time. They grow what they eat and eat what they grow. But when that money was given to them, there are a lot of brouhahas within the country. And then yet still, we think it will actually generate employment for a lot of young people in the Gambia. I just want you to talk a little about it. When I bring you again for our agricultural program, we'll discuss extensively about those issues. But just a little, when that money comes, what do you think government could have done better with that money when it comes to empowering youth employment?
You have to remind me. You said the 15 million was given to one company.
Was given to I think Jael or to it was I think from World Bank, or it was a loan sort of. If it
Yeah, no, I understand they were given a loan. I have not seen the details because the government won't release a lot of the information. That's part of the problem here.
Mhm,
If a government that is, that is doing the right thing and they are sure they are doing the right thing,
mhm,
what's the need for secrecy? Just like in the Africa 50, we had to read about it in the foreign press,
mhm.
before the Gambia government informed us. So some of these things, I mean, I want to, when I'm talking about many things, I want to make sure it is definitely based on facts.
Right.
Again, on principle, I don't have a problem with helping our local companies
So let me let
to,
me let me help let me help you to read it. In 2024, the Gambian company Ja Oil was given a controversial $50 million loan from Arabic Bank for Economics Development in Africa. Yeah,
yeah. So they were given a loan, I think that was guaranteed by the government.
yeah.
I understand. And it wasn't just for rice cultivation. I believe it was for rice importation.
Mhm.
Wasn't that the case?
Yes.
Yes. So the problem, I remember I spoke about it. The problem here is, first of all, uh, guarantee, because that should go. So see, the problem is we talk about loans and debt in the Gambia, and our debt is, we all know our debt is very high. But I can tell you that our current debt is actually higher than the government is reporting. Because whenever a government guarantees a loan, and government has done this, and most of the time they don't, people only find out about it, like, even loans to the president's nephew and other things. People only find about this through the work of investigative reporters, not through government transparency. When you guarantee a loan, there's always a possibility of default. So that is a contingent liability. A contingent liability is just a fancy way of saying that there's debt. All those sort of debts don't appear on our balance sheets, but they really should. You know. So the issue I have here, fundamentally, I don't have a problem with a private company getting a loan, let's say even from the government or guaranteed. But number one, have transparency in the process. Number one. Number two, let it be a competitive process where other Gambians that are in the sector, they also have equal chance of doing, because before Jar Oil goes into that, there are other private companies that are producing rice. There are other Gambians who have left comfortable jobs in America and they're engaged in rice production. So if you have an opportunity to provide financing, let's say it's for rice production, make it a transparent process. Make so other Gambians, maybe there's a Gambian that is outside right now who's in the UK who is doing investments in tractors, combined harvesters, planning to come back to Gambia. How would you know about that if you don't publicize this opportunity?
Mhm.
So I think transparency is important. Making sure that also when things are done, there's equal opportunity. We shouldn't have programs only for people who are politically connected to the president. You know,
Yeah.
the
So
other
so
point here, mhm.
go ahead. Go ahead. You
No, I
can
was
ask.
going to say the other point here that if this financing is for rice importation as opposed to rice cultivation, then it
Mhm.
is a very misguided program. Because right now, we are a country where we have the arable land, we have all of the resources that we need to be self-sufficient in rice.
Yes,
But
that
right
because
now,
the
90%
main
of
question the question was it's not about the money the amount of the money. The question was about the
yes,
intent purpose. It's to create employment for young people, as our today discussion centered on. But so far so good.
right.
I mean, you have been going to provincial Gambia doing your agricultural activities there. These $50 million could have create huge amount of employment in the Gambia.
Indeed. No, no. I mean, you could create huge amount of employment with just a fraction of that if you put it in the right program. If you said, okay, this is going to be in rice cultivation, local rice cultivation in the Gambia, not importation of foreign rice.
Mhm.
You know, this is why when government is going to do certain programs with the private sector, transparency is important, but it's not the only thing. You need to make sure it is transparent. You need to make sure that people are selected on merit rather than connection. You also need to have targets, well-defined targets that are measurable, that everyone, not just the private sector that's benefiting, but the public knows that this is public resources that are being used. And therefore, the government has a responsibility to make sure that those public resources, they benefit the people at large. Which means that if a company is going to receive some amount of money, they must make commitment to produce a certain number of goods at a certain quality, or a certain number of service at certain quality, and other byproducts like employment generation, their breakdown, whether they are temporary or permanent. All of these things should be communicated to the public so that a year or two from now, people can make determinations on their own whether public resources have been put to the best use. But this thing that you just described right now, all of these things were absent. It was no transparent process. It wasn't publicized. There was no information given how jar oil was picked while nobody else was not picked. There was no communication to the general public as to what were the deliverables they have to do in terms of the local quantities of, the amount of rice that's supposed to be supplied to the country, in terms of the number of jobs that are supposed to be generated, in terms of the tonnage of rice that's supposed to be processed, in terms of other things, in terms of the amount of imports that have to be reduced based on that local production. All of this information was not provided. So, in
Yes.
principle, that's
Mhm.
not the wrong way, but in practice, this government is basically doing these things in the wrong way.
Definitely, I'll bring you over. Auditor reports, the Republic, they have revealed so many revelations with regards to, incompetencies and mismanagement of so many resources that we will look into it in our subsequent programs. Let's go into technology and innovation. Doctor, we have digital economy. This is my area. And this digital economy, we believe, you as an economist, you know what digital economy can actually bring to the government. What digital economy, the Ministry of Digital Economy, can change the entire trajectory of Gambian economic sector. Um, that was bidding for how to call it, Senator to come, Starling Star rather, starting to actually operate in the Gambia, so that your people in Forodo can be able to have internet connection, so that your people in Forodo can be able to have Zoom meeting, so that your people in Forodo can be able to connect with their family members and their loved ones in abroad. But this thing was denied. Some African countries are doing it. And what is your take on the issue of digital economy? What do you think the digital economy could have done better at this for after 5 years of being established or thereabout?
No, I mean, the opportunities that the digital economy has for the country are almost immeasurable. If you want to discuss it, even if you have like half an hour to discuss it, I don't think you can give it justice. You can do it justice. So, you know, it's, see, basically, whether it's digital economy or anything, when the government is approaching it, the principle that should always be at the forefront is what is in the long-term interest of the Gambia. So if you are, I know you didn't mention this, but let's go to the issue of what happened with Pura mandating a price floor, where Pura actually said the digital, the telecom service providers
Mm.
cannot offer deals below a certain level. Basically, they are saying that they cannot make it cheap enough. Why would you do that? Pura is a regulatory authority for things like, let's say the digital economy, digital services provided by internet service providers and telecom companies. Their primary objective is to bring good service to the Gambian people at, quality service at affordable price. And the way you do that, you cannot just say, I want quality service and have it materialize immediately. You get quality service through competition by different providers competing against each other. As the price goes down, they are forced to innovate. So innovation comes price pressures as a result of competition pressures from your peers. So, talking about Starlink, for instance, this is what Starlink would have done for the Gambia. Basically, a new player would have come here, providing fast, high-speed internet, at some point, and then the current digital service providers or telecom service providers would be forced to up their game. If they couldn't compete, the market would force them to go out. But they don't have to go out because all they have to do is innovate and match the quality and the affordability that the other competitors are providing. Yet, as we are still making do with very poor service, the fact that we've made this far, is a miracle without me being disconnected.
Exactly.
The problem here is
For the
that
first time. For the first
our
time.
our government and our
Mhm.
officials, yeah, I've worked on many backups to prepare for this, so it's also not by accident. So I have two backups right now in addition to the one I'm using here, so that we'll not be disconnected. But the point here is that our regulators and our government officials are actually preventing innovation because Comium has been putting pressure on these other,
Yes, please.
mobile service providers. The government should have allowed that competition pressure. It is not the government's job to say that if you lower the price too much, these companies will go out of business. We already have many internet service providers. First of all, Pura has no capacity. I can tell you for a fact, even the ministry doesn't know how much money AfriCell is making. I know this because a minister told me. Pura has no capacity to tell you the financial health of any mobile company, mobile service company in the Gambia. They don't have the capacity. It's not part of their mandate. So for that authority, that regulatory authority, to go and put a price floor, basically they are saying we don't want competition. We don't want that quality to be improved. Let them stay wherever they are. We don't know how many of them have been bribed to arrive at something like that because it
Definitely.
doesn't make sense. It cannot be working for the Gambian people. I mean, life in the Gambia is hard enough. Price of everything is going up. Here we have a situation where an essential service, due to market forces, the prices are going down, and you step in and say that price is going too low. It makes no sense whatsoever. So as a result, we have a situation where the innovations that can come up in among those companies, in that space, that has been basically nipped in the bud, which means that companies or services in our economy that could use digital services. Think about other young people like you who want to do more streaming services, who want to host a streaming service, let's say all the way in a village in Wuli, or in a village in Nyani, or in Yamina. Would they be able to do it given the poor quality of our connection? I'm just coming from Fatoto and Base. At night it was very difficult to connect to the internet. The quality was really bad, because the competition that could have resulted in high quality services have been completely stopped in the track by this very government. It's completely inexplicable.
Deeply sad. Doctor, we couldn't have enough of you today. I know we're going to bring you again to discuss more about different issues as far as the country is concerned. So, I mean, just to close, we have a couple of minutes to close this session today. Just to close, what are some of the policy recommendations you want to give with regards to create youth employment in the Gambia? I know it's horrible.
Well,
We are living
yeah,
by it. I mean, we cannot be fooled. You look at your surrounding,
yeah,
people
yeah,
should
of
employ.
course. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
No, we'll have to see what are the drivers of economic growth. Without economic growth, you're not going to have investment by companies. You're not going to have your critical sectors expanding. You know, we have to identify those. Right now, if you want to create employment in the Gambia, it's going to be very difficult to think of something that is more important than the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector is important for many reasons. It is important for food security because that's a fundamental human necessity. Before you think about tomorrow, your stomach must be full. So food security is basic. So agriculture is important. If only for that, agriculture is very important. But the other thing about is that agriculture is labor intensive.
Mhm.
When you invest in agriculture, if you look at the constraints we have in agriculture, you know, rice cultivation, people want to engage. I know a Gambian friend who wants to engage in rice processing. He bought very expensive machines, took them to Brikama, but now they have been locked in a store in Brikama for 5 years. Why? Because there isn't enough rice coming in to utilize the capacity in that one. Number two, electricity is very intermittent and very expensive.
Exactly.
So if you want employment, you need to invest in agriculture. Beyond the issue of food security, it is employment generating, because a lot of Gambians would invest in agriculture to create jobs in the production side, in the processing side, in the marketing side. But you also have to, on the issue about energy. It's very important that Adam Barrow said recently that he's electrifying 1,000 villages. The problem is that those villages will have electrical wires going to their houses, but there will be no electricity. I can guarantee you that they will not have electricity in a year or two, because the electricity has to be generated before it is distributed to people's household. Right
Yeah.
now, the Gambia's generation capacity is less than 100 megawatts. We are importing more than 50% of the electricity that we use in the country is being imported. We spent over $200 million paying a small boat, a small power plant on a small boat over 7 years, when that money could have been invested in a power plant that would have met the whole energy needs of the country. This government, even when they focus on the right sector, they go and do the complete opposite. So what they are doing right now, imagine you have a very big town and you have one small borehole, and you said that you are going to make so everyone in the village is going to, everyone in the town is going to have water, and you go and put a tap in every compound, but there's only one small borehole. Do you think that one small borehole can supply every compound?
No.
No. The first thing, before you go and connect every compound to that tap, the first thing you should do is to make sure you have enough water being pumped. Then you go about the problem of distributing that water. This is the wrong thing the government is doing. They are putting all of these, connecting all of these villages to the grid, but they don't have the generation, electricity being generated to supply them. And most of these villages will have power. I mean, will have electrical wires, but they'll go for weeks. I promise you, come next year or the year, especially the year after the election, they'll come for weeks without power. So you are going to have, on paper, it's going to look like people have access to electricity when there will be no electricity. But the thing the government should focus on, that people who want, officials that are focused on generating employment and economic growth, they should look at the economic drivers. You make sure that the businesses and companies that are generating employment, they have affordable energy, they have affordable power. You invest in those areas, you make sure that the electricity in our industrial areas is reliable and is affordable. That will create jobs and employment, and which will increase the tax base, which will then allow the government to get more tax revenue even at a low tax rate. And that will now enable the government to invest in priority sectors. Later, you can expand electricity to other parts. But right now, you go and just wire villages. You don't have power plants. We have not had a single power plant constructed in the since this government came to power. Everything is being imported. Right now, we have an import-dependent economy, where as we import more, the value
It's
of our
depreciating.
dollar goes down, depreciate, which means the following year we'll pay more. That is not something that is tenable. It's not something that we can sustain. So we need to, things that we can produce locally, like our food, like our energy, we produce locally. Create employment in the process. Make sure that this downward pressure on our dollar is removed. We generate forex. We create employment opportunities, expand the tax base, enable the government to provide services like education and health. This is the recipe for moving the country forward.
Thank you, Dr.
Not
Gajiko. It has been a pleasure having you. And then, we couldn't have enough of you. I know the listeners, they are very excited. I'm seeing comment section from YouTube and Facebook right now. People are very excited. And then I know we're going to have you here in our subsequent programs, to give us more economic analysis on issues that are happening in the Gambia. Thank you, Doctor, for having you. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Doctor.
It's a pleasure being here, and I look forward to being on your program again. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.